Tape in front of a live studio audience.
You tap, right? You saw that.
Let me go with it. Oh, see it now.
Brentwood is probably number 2 wine range. Number 1 worst. Yeah.
That picture looks really good, man.
My friend used to tell me.
Huh?
That picture looks good.
Yeah, I told you. I like to thank Denver and Lauren for this beautiful notebook for the rock show.
David Bowie.
David Bowie notebook that looks like a cassette. It looks like a cassette, but it's a notebook.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's cool. So it's 2020 already, man.
Without question.
That shit. New decade.
New decade, 10 years. 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
When does it count? When it's 0 or when it's 1? Do you start it now from 1 to 0 or 0 to 9?
They know that it's
0 to 9? I don't know.
Yeah. Some people don't count it to the 2021. All right. Let's get rolling, motherfucker.
Yeah, we definitely got to get rolling here. We got a long show tonight.
Long show.
Right?
And we got some retards in the back of us that we might have to take a baseball bat and kill. The guy's loud for no reason. I know he's a piece of monkey crap.
Yep. Today's show is going to be about the Kinks.
Yep.
All right, and I'm trying to do a show on this for a while. It's a lot of information. We're going to stuff probably 2 shows into one.
All right, so that means I'm going to click.
Right.
Happy New Year, everybody. It's a new year, and it's a new season of the Rock Show. And we have, this year we're going to change the format. There's going to be one time we'll talk about a band's history. There'll be another time we'll talk about an album of a certain band or a certain singer. Right, Mike?
Right. Instead of talking about their whole history, we'll talk about how they're going to do an album, or one certain album. But today we're going to talk about the Kinks.
The Kinks are you know what? The Kinks to me were better than the Beatles. A lot of people
I can go there.
And I don't consider I wouldn't consider them a boy band either. Like the Beatles were like a boy band that were popular music.
They started out that way, but Ray Davies is a great songwriter. He's up there with McCartney and Lennon as far as I'm concerned.
They got the same thing like the brothers from what's that other group that always have problems? The 2 brothers that they also what the hell they did the song Oasis.
Oh yeah.
Those 2 brothers
The Gallagher brothers.
The Gallagher. You know, one time I went to a show and one of the brothers just walked off stage because he got so fucking pissed.
That used to happen. I mean, we're gonna have some stories like that with
and
them.
then with these motherfuckers, they did the same thing.
Definitely.
So people, welcome to the 46th episode of the Rock Show, and this is the Kinks.
Yes. Now, to understand the Kinks' history, you got to realize the Kinks are Ray and Dave Davies, 2 brothers, Ray being the older one. Now, Ray was born June 21st, 1944 in Fortis Green, north of London. He was the 7th of 8 children. Dave would follow a couple of years behind. They were born to Frederick and Ann Davies, working class family all the way.
Yeah.
Okay. Something that, the working class theme is something that was through all their music from the beginning to the end. The 8th child was Dave Davies. Now, he was born February 3rd, 1947. Immediately after he was born, there was a strong sibling rivalry between the 2 brothers. The rest of the people were all girls in the family.
Oh, yeah?
So they basically must have been vying for each other's attention or, whatever it was. But that house was a full house. The father worked in a slaughterhouse. Okay? He was like a second generation slaughterhouse guy.
And by slaughterhouse you mean butcher?
Butcher. Yeah. He would take the kids to the pub and hang out, and the mother used to sing. She was from Ireland. The whole house, always music was going on. His oldest sister, Ray's oldest sister, gave him a guitar one day for his birthday, and she was very into going to the big band dances that would be going on in schools and stuff like that, or dance halls, and she actually died. The day she gave him a guitar, she died that night dancing with somebody. Which is, the song "Come Dancing."
Come Dancing.
He's talking about his sister and everything. He's thinking of her. Dave played guitar too. Now, both of them had a school band when they were in school together.
Actually, they would talk about how they had asked them if they would like to do like a concert in school. That's what it was. Somebody asked them, and they picked another childhood friend that they had to be.
Yeah.
And there were like 3 guitarists. There were 2 guitarists and 1 bassist, right?
Pete,
That's what it was?
Pete Quaife you're talking about. He
Yeah.
ended up as the bass player to the Kinks.
Yeah.
And there was a drummer originally named John Stars.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes the band was known as the Ray Davies Quartet.
Yeah, the Ray Davies
Sometimes
Quartet.
it was known as the Pete Quaife Quartet. And the reason the change was it depended on who got the gig.
Yeah.
All right. So most of the time it was Ray, but occasionally Pete.
Pete, yeah.
Now
but
they
there was
debuted at a school dance, and it went extremely well. An early lineup of the band actually had Rod Stewart on vocals.
Wow.
Because he went to the same school.
Yeah.
Rod would leave that band pretty quickly and start something called Rod Stewart and the Moonrakers. Okay. And immediately the Rod Stewart and the Moonrakers became a rival band to the Ray Davies Quartet.
Oh, yeah?
Now, late in '62, Ray ended up going to Hornsey College of Art. He studied film. He was going to get into sketching and drawing, theater and music. And Dave, at that same time, got into a little jam up. Okay,
Yeah,
he was 15 years old. Remember, he was a couple of years
Yeah.
younger. He got caught having sex with his girlfriend, like right outside the school.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, in full-on sex. Okay?
Yeah.
And he got expelled. The both of them got expelled. She actually ended up pregnant. And
Didn't he wind up marrying her like a very early age?
no, Ray got married.
Oh, Ray, I know, I'm confused with them.
Dave and what happened was the two families got together, and they basically broke them up.
Well, oh, yeah, they kept them away,
Kept
yeah.
them away from each other. They would be reunited many years later as adults and have a relationship. But when he was 15, they broke them up.
Yeah.
And that messed him up. It did, because he was like in love with this girl, and that's how it was in those days.
Yeah.
You know?
Did they have a kid? Did the kid have a
Yeah,
kid?
they had a kid together. Yeah, they had a kid together.
Wow.
He wasn't allowed to see the kid, or
That's
anything
crazy,
like that.
man.
Yeah.
Into later on.
Yeah. Now they became acquainted with.
What's up, Brad?
I should say Ray became acquainted with somebody called the Dave Hunt Band. Now, Charlie Watts from the Rolling Stones was actually drumming in that band.
All right.
And it was a kind of a jazz band, and Ray wanted to get into that a little bit. He still had his quartet,
Yeah.
all right, but he was doing this side project with this Dave Hunt Band. He joined it for a few months, but kept the other band going.
Yeah.
63, early 63, February or so, he actually left that David Hunt band and then joined up with the Hamilton Kings band. Valentine's Day of 63 is very important. The Ray Davies Quartet played Hornsey Town Hall. It was a big gig.
Yeah.
It went over fantastically. But they didn't use that name. They were constantly changing little names around
But
to
didn't
get
they
more
wind
variety.
up calling themselves the Ravens?
Right. At that point, they used the Ramrods for a little while. Then they used the Ravens. By mid '63, the band was doing very well at shows and getting a lot of notoriety. They ended up picking up 2 managers to help them.
Yeah.
A guy named Grenville Collins and Robert Wace. Now, late in '63, they picked up a 3rd manager named Larry Page.
They had
I'll
a
be,
lot
I'll
of
be, I'll be
managers. They
honest
had
with
a
you.
lot of
I don't know
managers.
why they needed 3 managers.
Yeah.
I think that it did turn out to be a mistake for them.
Yeah, didn't it wind up suing those motherfuckers?
They got ripped off.
Yeah.
They got ripped off. I mean, if you're paying a percentage to each guy, well,
Yeah.
what's left
What
over?
you're making, yeah,
What's
not
left
much.
over, So by the end of '63, they settled on the name the Ravens.
What's up, Chris?
All right, Chris. And American record producer Shel Talmy was getting interested in them. He heard a demo brought over by one of the managers, and he began working with the band. Beatles promoter Arthur Howes paid to promote the Ravens live shows. Okay,
Wow.
they paid him, I should say,
Yeah.
to do the shows. Now, Shel Talmy got them a contract with Pie Records. He was so enthused with the band, he went out there, he was trying to get them a contract. Pie Records, which was a pretty good label, was interested and signed them. At that point, their drummer left, and they got a different drummer named Mickey Willett, and then he was replaced by Mick Avery, who would be
Yeah, Mick Avery would be there for a while.
Yeah. Now, he answered an ad in the Melody Maker magazine. He's on record saying like he was answering a bunch of ads, but the one that had the least description
That's the one.
it was the one he picked.
It's the one he picked.
You know, I guess the vaguest one, you should say.
Yeah.
Basically, Avery was around. He had done some early gigs with the very early Rolling Stones before Charlie Watts had joined the band.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he was playing with them.
He was actually a pretty damn good drummer.
Very good
Very,
drummer.
especially with them, with the way they were doing, because like when you listen to the Kinks, they had like this weird, like kind of fast pace.
Offbeat kind of thing.
Very fast paced. You look
Oh,
at
yeah.
them playing, they were
Some
like,
of the songs, yeah.
holy shit! You're like,
No,
motherfuckers,
really.
man, look
I
at
mean,
these guys jam.
they were like proto-punk.
Yeah.
I mean, they really were.
But I think they were like, to me, they're not pro. To me, they were more like, they were like a little bit of, like, they were like an infused. They were like rock and roll, jazz,
Well,
punk,
yeah.
everything
I mean,
fused into one thing. They're like their own style.
They were like, yeah, they really were different than the other big British bands
Yeah.
that were out. They were different from the Stones, different from the Beatles.
They were different,
Very
but
different.
to me, I think to me, the Stone is one of the greatest rock and roll.
Me too.
And then I like the Kinks. I would put the Kinks over
Kinks
the
are in
Beatles
their own, they're in
anytime.
their own category.
But they could have easily been the British invasion if they would have hit
Well,
the head
we're gonna get into why
know?
they got stifled.
Yeah,
We'll get
they-
into that. But now this is when they settled on the name the Kinks. Basically, it was for publicity. They were thinking kinks, kinkiness.
Yeah.
It was an outrageous name. Some of the clothes they wore was considered kinky. Kinky had a little bit of different definition back then. Not so sexy, more like just outrageous. You know.
But they pretty much, most of the time, they would dress in suits. So they would
Yeah, but
dress
they would wear like Edwardian suits.
Yeah.
Okay, with ruffles and all that shit. You know, and to be Ray is on the record saying he never liked the name.
Which one, the Kinks?
Ray. Yeah, he said he never liked the name. Ray.
He got it. That was a great name.
Yeah.
You know what? He did say he liked the Raven.
He liked the Ravens better.
He loved the Raven
Yeah.
name, right?
Yeah. Now, the first two singles they released on Pie bombed. It was a cover of Little Richie's Long Tall Sally.
Oh, yes.
And a song called You Still Want Me.
Yep.
Pie almost dropped them at this point and gave them a chance for another single. And June 15th, 1964, that single would be recorded, and it was called You Really Got Me. Everybody knows this song. All right. Now, the version they recorded on the 15th of June that year was considered too clean by Ray Davies. He didn't like the sound. He wanted it to be rougher, but Pie was like, fuck you, we're not giving you any more money for a single. So Shel Talmy actually laid out his own money for a studio, an independent studio, to re-record it.
And that's where he did that ruffle, that sound.
Well, what happened was
speaker.
Ray said, you know, I'm trying to make this distorted sound. How do I do this? He just had the idea to open the speaker up and slice it with a razor.
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
He sliced it open, and when he played, it was like, you know, and that was everything. That was it right there. And he had the sound, and they recorded it, and it's one of the greatest rock and roll songs.
And you know what? It gives me chills to today. Look at that. When you hear that song and you just hear that thing and you're like, even before you hear the words, you already know this is a fucking great song. Just
I mean,
because
that
like
song,
it gets you fired up and ready to go.
You Really Got Me was a song about sex.
Yeah.
In a way
Oh,
that you couldn't do a song about sex.
It was total about sex, man.
I mean,
It was a great song.
the Beatles were singing "She Loves You,"
Yeah.
okay, and he's like, "You really got me, baby."
You really got me. Like, yeah, you got me. That pussy's good.
And
You got me.
interesting is that in September, in August of '64, it would be released as a single. Within a month, they would do a gig on the Ready Steady Go program in England. Reprise Records in America would pick them up, and that would go to #1 in the States, and it would knock out "She Loves You" by the Beatles.
Let me tell you that song, like they're one of the few bands that actually went straight to #1 in America from England.
Yeah, they didn't. That was one of the few #1s they had.
Yeah.
But they did go to #1 with that. The band then went into the studio to record a whole album. That would be released in October of '64. The second single would be called "All Day and All the Night," which
Another
is
great song, great classic song.
Okay, that would get to #2 in the UK and #7 in the USA. Next would be "Set Me Free,"
Set Me Free, another
tired,
great
"So
song.
Tired of Waiting for You." Those songs also went to #1 in the UK.
That's a great song. All these songs are great.
Yeah. Early
But what was
'65.
the name of that first album? It was a self-titled album, right?
Yeah,
Was
just
it?
Kinks.
The Kinks.
Yes. Early '65, they went on a heavy tour and included Australia and New Zealand gigs. with Manfred Mann and the Honeycombs and the Yardbirds.
Oh yeah, the Yardbirds.
Yeah, imagine seeing the Kinks and the Yardbirds on the
That's
same
like a
boat.
fucking, that's crazy. That's like an all-star, man. That's like,
But back then it was nothing.
it was nothing, yeah, because they just started. People are like, oh yeah, and those people probably 20 years later, I saw that the Kinks and the Yard all in one
I'm not
show.
sure if Jimmy Page or Jeff Beck was in the band at that point.
Oh, yeah?
The Yardbirds. But I mean, either lineup had to be fucking amazing.
Ah, yeah, that's amazing.
You know,
It sounded
now,
really good.
During this tour, it became clear there was a lot of tensions in the band. There was actually an onstage fight between the drummer Avery and Dave Davies.
Yeah.
During a song at the end of "You Really Got Me," I think it was. Dave said something to make, it's never been clear exactly what, but he insulted him and kicked over his drum set. And fucking, and Avery just fucking grabbed the cymbal and threw it at him, and it sliced his head open. He ended up getting like 16 stitches in his head. He ran out of there because he realized what he did. He was scared he was going to get arrested. And the cops were looking for him, and the band somehow convinced the cops that it was all part of the act.
It was part of the act, all right.
Okay? But, you know, mid-65, they would come to America.
Why did they have so many problems? Why did they fight so much among themselves? Was it because they were so talented and there was too many egos? What the hell was it?
Imagine if, like, a few of us in the bar here got in a band.
Whoa.
We'd kill each other. There you go. That's your answer. All right? I mean, they happen to be brothers. They had some civil rivalry going on. But, I mean, you know, we're just working class guys always got, you know,
But
fucking
they're
turns into a fight.
brothers, you know, it's like funny, man.
But that wasn't even between Ray and Dave.
I know, that
was
was-
between
But
Avery.
they all fought. They all fought each other. They were fighting all the fucking time. It's like,
Now, and they would fight with other people. Mid 1965, they were on tour in the States. They finally got here. You Really Got Me single.
They would have kicked
album
the
is doing
Beatles' ass.
Right. The album is doing well. All Day, All Through the Night single is doing well. Okay. And what happens? They get banned from the United States.
But what's it because of green cards and stuff, right? Why did they get banned?
No. They did it. They did a gig at the for Dick Clark's Where the Action Is show.
Yeah.
Okay. And something happened where that show used to be on ABC. And what happened was I think they showed up a little bit late to the taping, and there was a head honcho union guy from the American Federation of Musicians Union that said something like, you know, now that the Beatles are here, all these limey fucks are coming over. He said limey.
Oh, shit.
All these limey fucking, you know, pimple-faced fucks are coming over thinking they can do whatever they want. And somebody, it's never been clear who in the Kinks did it, popped him
Wow.
in the face.
It gotta be. It had to be. It had to be
Dave.
Mick. It might be
It might have been
Mick.
Mick or Dave. Ray wasn't very confrontational.
No.
But probably Dave. I can see
Dave
Dave.
goes, what did you say, you motherfucker?
Yeah. So they immediately got banned by the biggest musicians union in the country. All right. Hey, my time.
Going on, guys? Happy New
Right.
Year.
But you know what I think was? I think it was a setup. I think the Beatles planted that guy there because they didn't want competition.
We need to talk about this on the next conspiracy.
You understand? I think that's what really happened. Guess who was the Beatles' biggest rival?
Set up.
The Kinks would have been the biggest rival.
The Stones too.
The Stones too, but they were very different. But you know what?
You never know.
I'm telling
You never know.
It
But
was the Beatles.
whatever it was, this would affect them profoundly because this was the height of the British invasion in the 60s. And they were banned from fucking playing here. And so for 4 years, that band would be on. But now, in July of 65, on that big tour when they were over in East Asia, they stopped off in Bombay, in India.
Bombay.
And Ray, this was in July of 65. Ray was, one morning, he was watching these Indian fishermen, and he was listening to them sing, and he decided to write a song called See My Friends. And See My Friends is the very first song to feature, a pop song to feature a sitar in it. Okay? It's an Indian instrument, okay? And you sit down, you play it like this, it has like strings. And
if you walk on 6th Street, you see them playing that all the time.
Right. And a lot of people say, oh, the Beatles, like Norwegian Wood was the first one. No, it was this song was the first one ever recorded. And actually, George Harrison is on the record saying, like like, what is that instrument? Like, hey, they used to, and he did it like a couple of months later.
Yeah.
But after that tour, they started working on another album called Kinda Kinks, the second album.
That was a great album.
Now, 10 out of the 12 songs on that album were originals, not like the first one, which had a lot of covers on it.
Yeah.
Look at this. We got Tired of Waiting for You, their version of Dancing in the Streets.
Yep.
A song called Don't Ever Change.
Don't Ever Change.
This album, Ray is on record saying he doesn't like it. It was rushed. That the production is not good. I think it's a good album.
It's a good album,
It's
man.
good, but it was rushed. They needed to get more material out and stay current. But
what the problem was is that I think Ray was a little bit.
He's a perfectionist.
He's a perfectionist. That's what it was.
Yeah.
He looked at the stuff he didn't think was good because he didn't like the name the Kinks, which I think is. I like the name the Kinks better than the Ravens. To tell you the truth.
Ravens sound like a rockabilly band.
Yeah, and then the way and even when you get an interview and you see this guy talk, he's fucking brilliant. Man.
He's a genius.
The guy's like a fucking genius.
I think he's a genius, and you listen to him and you can't stop listening.
Yeah, you can't stop it. He's fucking
Yeah.
great. He got like that weird fucking thing that he puts a spell on
you
you,
get
man.
zoned in on him, exactly. Now, what they would do is they would release this album, but then they would come out with a couple of non-album singles. First one being Well Respected Man,
Yep.
and the second being Dedicated Follower of Fashion.
Yep.
I mean, you hear these songs in the pause
Yeah.
today. They weren't
Yeah.
even on the album, Late in '65, they would come out with another album called King Controversy. It's 3 albums in 2 years.
Yeah, it's
All right?
3 albums. That's
Yeah.
a lot of work,
On
man.
this one, they would bring in Nicky Hopkins on keyboards and piano. Nicky, of course, would be involved with the Stones and other bands later on, but he was first brought in on the Kinks here. These songs were more socially conscious songs, stuff like "Where Have All the Good Times Gone?" That was a single off it. Ray's writing was changing. It was becoming more socially conscious.
Yeah.
But one thing with Ray is he's very nostalgic in his writing.
Yeah.
Right. He talks about past times.
Yeah.
When he was young, when years ago, and he's very different than any of the other major songwriters of that era. Where they were, you had like at that point, rock was getting very heavy, acid rock, Hendrix, all that stuff, and he's singing about, back in the 40s.
Yeah, back like
I
I
very
remember being
different.
a child
Right,
and hanging
right,
out or dancing
right,
here.
Right.
What's one of my favorite songs? Lola. I love that.
Well, that's a couple years away, and that would be a very big hit for that.
To me, that's one of my favorite Kinks songs.
Controversial.
It is controversial.
And when you listen to it, you don't realize it until you really listen to it.
Yeah.
Now, at this point in '65, Ray was married. He had a kid, and things were getting to him. And the pressures of trying to come up with a hit single, completing an album, touring. Things were getting to him. Of course, he, taking care of his family.
And they were making no money.
And they really weren't. They really weren't making anything. And he was living in the same part of London he grew up in. He didn't move away.
Nope.
He moved like 2 blocks away from where he grew up. There was a lot of infighting, and Ray had what could really only be called a nervous breakdown. I mean, he's saying it wasn't, that he was just exhausted.
It was definitely
but
a nervous breakdown.
he needed that time.
Time out, yep.
Yeah. Now, also, bassist Quaife had a car accident, and he was replaced by a guy named John Dalton for a little while.
Yeah.
Okay, until he got better and could play again. That would be around the end of '66. Now, in '66, they had released a single called "Sunny Afternoon."
That's a fucking great song. I love that song.
Songs,
I love that song.
And that one knocked out the Beatles' paperback writer for #1, summer of '66.
Wow.
Working on Face to Face LP in '66. Now, Nicky Hopkins was brought in again to play piano and harpsichord. They were expanding their sound a little bit. That album will be released in October of '66. Immediately went to number 8 in the UK and didn't do well in the United States. It went to number 135. But again, there was a ban on it.
Yeah.
They could not play live, and without being out there live, their albums were not. They were being forgotten. But the interesting thing is they
gave radio play.
Not much.
Not much,
Not
right?
much because the albums weren't selling. All right, so they weren't getting much. But the interesting thing about this is Ray was able to really kind of expand on his songwriting and do what he wanted to do in England, where he was more comfortable anyway. like this one went to number 135 in the States, number 8 in the UK. Now, there was the single off this album was Dandy. That's a great song.
That's a great song.
Party Line, and that was written by Dave Davies. There was some controversy with that. Dave said he wrote it. I think Ray said he co-wrote it with him. You know,
Here we go.
back and forth. Now, in November, they would release a non-LP single, which would be one of my all-time favorite Kinks songs, and that's called Dead End Street.
Dead End Street.
Yeah, top 10
That's a
in
great
the UK. It would only make it to number 73 in the States, but this is a typical working-class Kinks song, talking about living in an apartment, being broke, eating toast with jam and honey, and cracks up in the ceiling and leaks under the sink.
Fucking
And,
fantastic.
and they made living in squalor, which is something they knew about.
But think about what you were talking about Sunday afternoon. It's like the taxman has taken over my door and everything else.
Well, that was a big thing in the 60s in England, and you have the Beatles taxman.
Yeah.
The taxation was like 90%.
Yeah.
For if you made a certain amount.
That's crazy.
Which would get us to the Stones album, Exile on Main Street.
Exile on
they
Main
were tax
Street.
exiles.
Yes.
All right. So that's all part of that era.
Yeah.
They made a video for Dead End Street, which you can see on YouTube. It's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
They dressed like Charles Dickens characters, big top hats, and they're walking around their town carrying a coffin. The video, I think, was banned. Pretty sure.
Do you see the video for 8 Man?
Yeah, he's running around. Yeah, that's great. There's a guy in a gorilla suit. That's fantastic.
It's fucking fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, we're still a couple years away from Big Man. I like the song King Kong also. King Kong, I'm a hydrogen bomb. May of '67, they would release what is probably one of their most beautiful songs ever, and it's called Waterloo Sunset. May of '67 is a song about two lovers on the bridge at Waterloo Station looking over at the city, and there's a kind of guy, he's like observing them and he's reflecting on these two people. Now, this song, actually, you think it was a big production. It took only 10 hours to record, right? And they spent a lot of time on coming up with the guitar sound for it.
Wow.
What they did was they used what was called a tape delay. And it was something that hadn't been done in the studios in like 10, 15 years for people.
What do you mean by a tape delay?
Well, okay, I'm not a sound engineer, but what I understand, they would delay the guitar sound almost like an echo.
Oh, okay.
And it was something that hadn't been done since the 50s, and this was 67. So it sounded fresh. It sounded new.
It was new sound,
and
yeah.
Steve Marriott, who was in the Small Faces at the time, is on the record saying to Ray, or Dave, I think, how'd you do that guitar sound? And he's like, what? He's like, how'd you do it? Oh, it's an old technique. And they Steve thought that they invented it, but it was an old technique. I think like Hendrix would use it on a few things later on. Now,
how do you recreate that in a live album? Yeah, you can't recreate
live?
that. No, right? So it's a sound that you can only get pretty much.
You could probably do it now, but not then.
Not then.
Then they didn't even have PAs back then, really. Anything to do that. Robert Christgau, who was a famous musical journalist, ended up writing for the Village Voice later on and things like that. He is on record saying that Waterloo Sunset is one of the most beautiful songs in the English language.
Wow.
I agree. I think it is a beautiful song. September of '67, they would come out with the Something Else LP. Dave Davies penned Death of a Clown on that. They had the song David Watts. Waterloo Sunset was thrown on there.
Did you see in the video where I think was it Davey or somebody started singing Death of a Clown all by himself, like and they cut him off in the middle of it and started playing something else?
Yeah.
What the fuck? You remember that shit?
Was that in the Imaginary Man?
Yeah, like he started singing, then the other guy just hey, okay, thank you.
Because it was a Dave Davies production, and he was singing.
I was thinking, like, this guy's gonna punch him in the face.
Right. Now, what happened with this album, the Something Else album, is at that time Pi Records was putting out all these compilations.
Yeah.
And so you had all these best ofs out, and then they come out with a new album. So they were competing against themselves. It sold poorly. They were competing with themselves on greatest hits. Now, to save face, what they did was they released a non-LP single called Autumn Almanac, which is great. And it's one of the only times, though, it got critically panned because, and this is strange, the critics said that it sounded like every other Kinks song. Well, what the fuck do you expect
It's
it
the
to sound
Kinks.
like?
What's
It's
it supposed to do?
Well, I don't know if
It's
they
supposed
were,
to sound like Elvis?
No,
it's supposed to
the
sound
critics
like
were
the Kinks.
turning on them at that point. I don't know, but in '68 the band kind of stopped touring a little bit.
Yeah.
And they would release the Wonder Boys single. All right, now that only got to number 36, and it was the first time in years that they didn't get to the top 20 in their singles.
Yeah.
But Ray continued writing the way he wanted to, and he didn't give a shit about writing a hit, even though Pi Records was saying you gotta write a hit.
But Pi Record was a terrible fucking company for them. You know that the Kinks were one of the few bands that sold a million records like with no problem?
Yeah, I mean,
Like they got gold albums.
and they got nothing for it.
They got nothing for it.
Because they had too much management, and they had signed a lousy contract. With
Yeah, it
Pi.
was bad contract.
Whatever it was, they weren't getting enough on every sale.
So how many more albums did they have to do with Pi to finish the contract? Did they get out of it? Or did
They're going to be out of it soon, okay? Because they were only signed up for a few years. What happened at this time is, even though they weren't selling, Ray was writing like crazy, and he was working on a project that was called Village Green at that point.
Yep.
Now, he did some shows, the band did some shows with Peter Frampton's band called The Herd. Pete Quaife is on the record saying that we hated doing these shows. We just did them to get out of the studio for Village Green. They weren't good, they were boring. They would play for 20 minutes or something, and that's it. All right, now, in June of '68, they would release the Days single, which is probably my all-time favorite Kinks song. All right, and it's a song about saying goodbye to somebody you love. It's a beautiful song. Got to number 12 in the UK. It didn't chart in the US because the band was still on. This project became the Kinks or the Village Green Preservation Society. In late '68, that album would come out. Now, it dealt with very British themes. It was sort of a loosely based concept album about small town life and growing up British. All right.
Yeah. Again, he writes about what he knows.
That's what he knows. Now, this album came out the same day, okay, in '68, as the White Album by the Beatles.
Wow.
And Hendrix's Electric Ladyland album.
Wow, those are
To give a comparison here, the Beatles' White Album, I think, sold 2 million albums approximately on its first day.
Wow.
You know how much the Village Preservation Society album sold?
100,000?
25,000 worldwide.
Oh man.
Okay. The Kinks were so under the radar at that point. Okay. And they come out with an album that really doesn't have any good singles on it.
No.
It's a concept album. Ray didn't give a fuck. They put it out.
They just wanted.
Okay. Now,
And I also think they weren't happy with the company. They were trying. Maybe they did that just to try to get them to
It's
release
possible.
me, do something, get me the fuck out of here.
It's possible. They would be gone soon. Okay. Now, Robert Christgau, again, who's a big Kinks fan, working for the Village Voice, praised the album, Village Preservation, but it didn't do anything for the sales. But what did carry the album was college FM radio picked up on it and played a lot of tracks from it. Interesting though, in their whole stretch of their career, that album now has eclipsed in sales all their other albums of originals.
Oh, of course.
Okay, it's become like the cult album for them that everybody has to have. Now, in early '69, Quaife, the bass player, would leave the band and start a new band called Maple Oak. Ray pleaded with him not to leave, but he left anyway, and they called back John Dalton, who was playing with them for a little while at that time when Quaife was hurt from the car accident.
Yeah, John Dalton wasn't a bad.
No, very good bass player.
Very good
All
bass
right.
player.
April of '69, Ray said, "Listen, we got to do something about this band in America. We got to make it in the States." So he traveled out to LA and he met with some of the head honchos of the American Federation of Musicians Union, and they lifted the band on the day. It worked itself out. Whatever he did.
Yeah, but
Okay.
the Beatles said, "Hey, we already conquered.
Well,
We
the
can let
Beatles,
them in."
the Beatles were almost done by that point. It was
So
April
that's
of
why
'69.
they can come back.
Yeah, they figured they'd make some money.
Yeah.
Now they would come out with a new album now in '69 called Arthur, or the Decline and Fall of the British
That's a
Empire.
great fucking
My,
name.
my favorite Kinks album.
That's a great name of
It's a
an
great
album.
title.
You got the album too. That title alone,
Yep.
I'll be like, I need to buy this album with that title.
A lot of people think it's about King Arthur. It's not.
No.
Okay. Now that album had some modest commercial success. Critically acclaimed, it was.
Yeah.
It had a lot to do with British themes and life during World War II. In October of '69, they would start the U.S. tour based on that album. It didn't go as well as they wanted it to. A lot of promoters didn't want to touch them, even though the band was off.
Yeah.
But they did manage to get some great gigs in at some major cities, including New York, where they played the Fillmore East over on 2nd Avenue. Over here.
Oh, yeah, I
okay.
remember that.
Yeah, I've seen those posters
Yes.
of the Kinks, and I've
Yeah.
known. I think Rick Rivets told me he saw them there. And I know guys that age that
Wow.
did see them. They also played the Whiskey A Go Go that year.
Whiskey
And,
A
they got
Go-Go,
some
yeah.
good gigs in, even though some shows were canceled. May of 1970, they would release the Lola single. Your song, okay?
Great fucking song.
Now, what's interesting is when the opening line is he says tastes just like Coca-Cola, okay? But he got in trouble for that, okay? Because in England, there's the BBC has a rule where you can't say any kind of product in your song, won't play it. So they had to immediately go back and re-record it and say Cherry Cola.
Cherry Cola,
Okay,
yeah.
so there's actually two different versions of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And you do occasionally hear the Coca-Cola version.
Yeah.
When he does it live, he says Coca-Cola,
Coca-Cola,
a lot.
yeah.
But sometimes he says Cherry Cola too.
Cherry
so
Cola.
you never know what you're gonna get.
I love that bit.
Yeah.
Tastes like Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, the champagne tastes like Coca-Cola. Now that was a U.S. top 10 hit.
Yep.
And it broke it open for them for the Kinks commercially here.
Yeah.
The album in November 1970 was called Lola vs. Power Man and the Money Go Round, Part 1.
What a great
Top
title.
40, top 40 in the United States. Now, they would have a lot of success with that album, but immediately they would throw their support behind the soundtrack of an album called Percy.
Percy, yeah, that was...
Okay, a film called Percy came out, and the film is about a penis transplant. Now I don't know what they were trying to do with this. They were off the success of Lola, maybe or
Yeah,
something. I don't know.
I don't know. Let's do a soundtrack.
Yeah, let's do a soundtrack.
About a peanut
Okay.
transplant.
And this would be called Percy. It was mostly instrumentals. And Reprise Records in the States didn't want to release it because the album's about a penis transplant.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but they did have one good single off that album called God's Children,
Yeah,
which
it's a
is
good
really
song.
good. And this was the time when Pi would release them. Their
Yeah,
contract
so they
was
are.
up. And they actually ended up leaving Reprise as well, too.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Now, the end of '71, they signed up with RCA. They got $1 million advance, and they would use that money to build in England Conk Studios, which was their recording
that's
studio,
good
Conk
too.
Studios. Now, they would begin immediately in November of '71 on the Muswell Hillbillies album. Muswell was their town from England where they were from,
Yeah.
Muswell Hill, so they called it Muswell Hillbillies.
Yep.
All right. And that would be released on RCA. And it would have many different styles on that album, including country, something they were experimenting with.
Yeah.
You had some Muswell Hillbilly title track, a song called Have a Cup of Tea, a song called Acute Schizophrenia Paranoia Blues. And it sold pretty well.
Say that 5 times.
I can't say it right once, I'm loved up. 1972, they would come out with an interesting album called Everybody's in Showbiz. Again,
Yes.
they're on RCA.
Another album.
And it was a double album, and it was basically live and studio. The live stuff was recorded over 2 nights at Carnegie Hall here in the city. And the Celluloid Heroes was the big song off the studio side.
Very good song.
Yeah, and that's a song about different celebrities.
Yeah.
And I love that song.
That's a great song.
Yeah. Now that would get to number 70 in the United States. Not a big seller, but the band was becoming slowly more theatrical, and they were getting into a different period here. This period for
But I think here they went through a little rough. They weren't as good. They went through a little rough patch.
I don't know what they were doing here. I think there was a lot of indulgence, a lot of drugs going on. Ray had an overdose during this theatrical period.
I also think Ray wanted to make his own white album, and I think that Preservation Act 1 or 2 was a total. I thought they sucked.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna shit on that.
Might as well just say it. They did suck. It's a period that I don't know too many Kinks fans that could get into it. There was a lot of infighting in the band. Ray, like I said, he had a drug overdose at this point. In '73, they had released the Preservation Act 1 album. They were just becoming more theatrical on stage. They were bringing like these characters.
Yeah,
there was outfits. There was big choruses and backup singers and all kinds of stuff going on. There was a lot of people on stage.
Yeah, it was like.
And Ray had a drug overdose at the time, and there was talk of him leaving the band and Dave taking over. That's how bad it got.
Yeah.
But it never got to that point. Ray got better. Now, some people say that know him well say he's never been the same since.
Wow.
So, I don't know. But Preservation Act 2 would come out shortly after that, and Ray would come out with this character called Mr. Flash, and Dave would be Mr. Black. Figured they're good and bad, okay? And they would fight each other on stage, and they had these other costume characters. There was one track called Mirror of Love at that point that was kind of like a Dixieland jazz kind of song. In May '75, they would come out with the Kinks Presents a Soap Opera.
Yeah.
Now, it's an interesting concept. Basically, it's about a rock star that changes places with like an average Joe guy.
Yeah.
And, what would happen if you did that? Now, they would come out in August of '75 with the final theatrical album that they did called Schoolboys in Disgrace. And basically, it was a backstory going all the way back to Preservations with Mr. Flash, just telling a little story of that. It got to number 45 in the United States. Moderately well.
Yeah.
No, moderately well.
But these were really strange albums.
They were
fucking weird.
And they were all for RCA.
Yeah.
And I don't know. You know what's interesting? At the same time in '75, you know who else was on RCA?
Who?
Lou Reed.
Wow, Lou Reed.
And that's when he came out with the Metal Machine Music Feedback album. So they must have been pissed off that they had these two artists that were like supposedly so great for putting out shit.
Putting out shit. Horrible shit. Yeah. You know when I think they really got when I think Ray got back into funk, when they got Clyde Davis. I think he
because what would happen the next year in '76 is the RCA record contract ran out. They would sign with Arista and Clive Davis.
Yeah, and that's
Clive Davis liked the Kinks, but he wanted to turn them into like an arena rock band.
Yes, he
okay,
told them he should be playing big arenas and stuff like that.
Right. And they would release in '76 the Sleepwalker LP.
Yeah.
And they John Dalton at that point had left on bass. They brought in a guy named Andy Pyle briefly for the tour of Sleepwalker. It got to number 21 in the States. Did very well. They were playing like Madison Square Garden and bigger arenas. By May of '78,
something crazy. My uncle went to that show. He actually got the playlist from somebody in the back of that day.
Oh, on stage.
He got it on stage. He got it somewhere in the house. I need to get that and bring on the show.
I'd love to see what songs they did exactly.
Yeah, because he said it was an incredible show and they just played and he said the arena. He said women were like taking their shirts off and it was crazy.
Wow,
it was crazy.
I'd love to hear that. You have to see that list. Now, in May of '78, they would come out with the second album for Arista, an album called Misfits. In between these two albums, they would come out with a non-LP single. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, Father Christmas.
Father Christmas, yep.
Okay. And the top 40 single off of the Misfits album was a song called A Rock and Roll Fantasy. John Dalton returned briefly at that point on bass, but would leave again and get replaced by the ex-Argent bass player Jim Rodgers. Argent was a band that came out of the Zombies.
Yeah, you know, this band changed a few times. A few
they
people.
did.
They didn't
Bass
have a lot.
players.
They didn't have a lot of members, but they did change once
And
in a
some
while.
guys came back, and
Even the
up
drummer,
again.
didn't the drummer get changed once or twice?
Eventually,
Because
yeah,
he
eventually,
was.
yeah. Now, 1979 they would come out with one of my favorite albums, something called Low Budget. It got to number 11 in the USA, and bands like at that point it was the height of new wave, and you know, bands like the Jam and the Pretenders and the Knack 79 were covering the Kinks, live or on their albums. Van Halen came out with "You Really Got Me."
Yeah.
A couple of years later, they would do, you know, "Where Have All the Good Times Gone."
Yeah.
1980, they would come out with the album called Live, an album One for the Road. Dave Davies made 2 solo albums at this point.
Yeah.
One was self-titled and one was called Glamour. Now, late in 81, they came out with one of their best albums. It's called Give the People What They Want.
And they gave people what
And
they
did.
wanted.
They did.
They
that album
delivered.
had Destroyer on it, you know, Paranoid.
yes, yes.
I love that song. And it also had the song called Better Things, which is a great fucking song.
That's
So,
another great song.
between 81 and 82, they would tour pretty much relentlessly. They would be playing in front of 205,000 people at one point in 82 at the US Festival.
Yeah, they were. You know what? They were touring. They're like one of the few bands that they were touring for a long, long time.
Like 2 years straight off that album.
Every year, wasn't there a little controversy? Because didn't Ray have his wife doing like back vocalists at one point?
That was a little bit earlier.
Right? Earlier? I
Yeah.
wanted to bring that early, but
Okay.
there was like a little thing about that.
Yeah, I think that was during the Face to Face or around that time sessions. He was married. He brought his wife in to do some backing vocals, and the wife was like, "Oh, you should sound like this or that." Dave was like, "Fuck you,
Fuck
get
you,
it, fuck, get the fuck out of here." You know, that's a little Yoko Ono kind of problem.
Yoko Ono problem, yeah.
Well, that wife would eventually leave him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately. In spring of '83, they would come out with the "Come Dancing" single.
Great song.
And that got to number 6 in the United States. I always love that song. It's not one of the best Kinks songs at all. Okay, but there's just something about it. At
But
least
that's
like
a tribute to his sister.
tribute to his sister that died, and also a point in my life that I just, like you have songs that like they may not be the greatest songs, but when you hear them, you remember.
Yeah.
Like when you were 13 or 14.
Yeah.
That's me with that song. Whenever I hear that, I always listen to it. I never turn it off.
That's like 8 Man for me.
8 Man is.
I love that song. I can listen to
Well,
that.
you're an
thing
8 Man.
Yeah, I'm an 8 Man.
Now that album was called State of Confusion, with Come Dancing on it. That would go to number
Great
12
album.
in the United States. There was another single on there that did well called Don't Forget to Dance. That went top 30. Now the second half of '83, Ray began working on this like film project called Return to Waterloo. And it was at a high point. The Kinks were doing very well. They were selling a lot of records. Dave was making a lot of money. Ray was making a lot of money. They had a good contract. And Ray went off and started doing this movie thing, and Dave got pissed off over it. Ray also, at that point, he had divorced the wife earlier, but he was involved with Chrissy Hynde.
Yeah.
Okay. I think they had a kid together.
You know what it was? Ray was such a fucking. Even when you look in that movie, The Imaginary Man,
Imaginary Man, yeah.
it's like something about him. Like you gotta watch it. Like the way he talks and the way he tells story, and it's like mystical. It's like a weird fucking. You know what I mean? Because I couldn't stop watching that documentary. I was watching like at 4 a.m, and I watched the whole. I seen it twice now.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, no, it's a great documentary. I think Julian Temple directed that, right?
Oh God! There was a guy that say he was.
I think it's Julian Temple.
Yeah, because they showed the guy in the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's him. His relationship with Chrissy Hynde ended really badly. Dave kind of got back into feuding with Mick Avery again. He would be forced out of the band, and Bob Henry would be the drummer at that point. 1984, they came out with an album called Word of Mouth. They kind of finagled this album where it was like a half drum machine and half Bob Henrich on drums. It's not a bad album. There was a song on there called "Do It Again" that did really good. Got to number 41 in April of '85. Now we're getting into the end period here. It would be '86 through '96. They would be signed by MCA in '86, MCA Records. They came out with an album called Think Visual. Okay. There's a song called Lost and Found, Working in a Factory. Think Visual, the title track, actually bashed MTV. And they were actually being played on MTV quite a bit at that point.
On MTV, yeah.
So they bashed the whole like video culture and everything. They would come out with a live album in '87 called The Road. '89, they would come out with UK Jive. Now that album bombed. It was a live album and it went to number 122.
You're lucky even got to that.
MCA dropped them after that. 1990, they would get, I guess, the ultimate recognition, and they would get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
You know what he said about that? He'd say, and then he was like, yeah, you know what, we belong to me.
Dave was like, fuck it, but then he was like, you know what, we deserve to be in there.
It was like, it was funny. Again, every time I bring the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he shit on it.
I hate the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's bullshit. It's got nothing to do with rock and roll. But if you don't put the Kinks in there, it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything,
So they had to put them in. Now, they would come out with, in 1990, briefly on Columbia Records, a song called Did Ya? Okay, I'm sorry, excuse me, an EP called Did Ya? It didn't chart. It didn't chart. The song in the album did not chart. They recorded some other albums they would put out on their own at Kinks Studios, but by 1996 they did their last gig ever, and that was at Dave Davies' 50th birthday party, and it was appropriate because it was at the Kissel Arms pub in their town in London, where they got started. It was across the street from their childhood home. They played their last gig there, and then they went on. Ray and Dave did some solo projects and stuff after that. Now, I have to flash forward here a little bit because a very interesting thing happened to Ray. Do you remember this? 2004, what happened to him? In New Orleans?
Well, what happened?
A couple of weeks earlier, he had actually got knighted by the Queen. He's a Sir. Sir Ray Davies.
Sir Ray,
Okay? But he was with his girlfriend a couple of weeks later. This was in January of 2004. Down in the French Quarter. And some piece of shit grabbed his girlfriend's pocketbook and took off.
Stabbed, right?
No, he got shot.
That's what it was.
And he chased after the fucking guy.
I remember that,
He chased after the guy, and the guy turned around and shot at him and got him in the leg. And he was banged up, and people were like, "Ray, what the fuck you doing? Let the guy have the pocketbook while you're chasing him." But Ray's a
He said he didn't even think about it. He didn't even think. He said, "I just saw it and then I chased."
What would you do?
It's instincts. It's like sometimes your instincts take over.
Sometimes that happens. So he ended up getting shot. Now later on that year,
the new instinct is to take the phone while you're watching the crime and videotape it.
Now somebody be videotaping it as he's shot. Fuck that. Now, later on that year, in June of 2004, Dave Davies would have a stroke. Okay, but he recovered. Now, what I've been hearing over the last couple of years is there's talk of a reunion. Okay, now they haven't gotten it together yet. What I've heard is Ray and Dave, who are living in the same town and whatever, they've been meeting in pubs and bars, having beers, talking about doing this. I hope it happens. I've never seen the Kinks. I would love to see them.
I think they're trying to make the fans gross enough money so they can make the album too.
Well, yeah, I mean, they should come out with a new album. But Ray's been coming out with good solo stuff.
They're talking about an album, a Kinks album for 2020. And if they come to New York, we gotta see them. I don't care who.
Have you ever seen them?
No, I never seen
No,
the Kinks.
I didn't see them that time when I was young, but
Yeah, I never seen them.
I could have went, but I just didn't.
I probably, yeah, you know what, it was the 90s, but I never saw them. I think I missed them,
Nah.
but I never saw them live. So
I
if they ever did come out to the Garden live, you know, that's what I call the Budweiser guys. And
Oh, yeah.
get the nice
We'll get our nice suite up there.
Yeah, and
The
that'd be
free
it.
food and the free booze.
The free booze, yeah.
That's most important.
Yeah, very important. We got lumped up in that Misfit show.
Oh, my God, never forget that. Let's talk about the album of the week.
Album of the week, man.
Album of the week is going to be Arthur, or The Decline and Fall of the British Empire.
Great
from
album.
1969.
Great album.
Good year. I was born that year. That album, you know, it's funny with me with the Kinks. I've always liked them, and you know, there's times when I love the early period, some of the later stuff, but this kind of like late '60s period, I've settled in on as their best.
Yep.
And it'll lead me to the song of the week, which is Days, which is a song that I never get sick of. It's a beautiful song. Everybody should check out Days by the Kinks.
Yep.
We got some upcoming shows I want to mention.
Yep. Into the show.
January 16th, The Addicts, great British punk band, are playing for Embassy Theatre. Go check them out or you're an asshole. Okay? And the other show is 23rd and the 24th of January. Peter Murphy is doing a tribute to Bowie. I think around the same time he's doing a show of his own material. I know that is sold out, and the first show of the Bowie tribute is sold out. But the 24th, me and this fucking guy are going.
Yep.
Okay.
Should be a good
and
time
we're going
for
to see Peter Murphy from Bauhaus do all Bowie stuff, and it should be awesome.
Yeah. And
all I got,
then
man.
Bauhaus playing Radio City.
Bauhaus is playing in June. We'll get to that.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to do a show on Bauhaus.
Oh yeah, oh man, and everybody, we got the next. Pretty much, Rocket Mike got the list for the next couple of weeks, and the next
Yeah.
show you should be
We
pretty good.
we jumped right into 2020. I really wanted to have like the first 2 or 3 months. We got about 3 months. You know, fixed what we're doing.
Yeah.
February is Black History Month. We're going to do some great black artists, starting with Bob Marley. We're going to
Ooh,
part of
Bob
that.
Marley.
Coming up soon, we got a show on Dr. John. We got a show on Elvis Costello, and we're going to do a show on the making of Exile on Main Street by the Stones.
That's gonna be a great show.
All right, so stay tuned for that in the next couple of weeks. That's all I got, Mr. Rossi.
And what do we say? Don't get drunk, get lumped up. Excellent. That was excellent.
I can't believe I got all this fucking material
Holy shit.
in an hour.
Oh. I hope this thing didn't go off.
No.
Oh, yeah, I'm coming back to work, all right? I went to the sports bar. It's probably not that crowded.
Well, that's what I